Right, I'm back in the greenhouse for another What Am I Sowing and Growing video, and this time we're doing October. But before I get started, I will just quickly run through what we did in September so you can see the progress. And I'll just remind myself here on my iPad, all the details are down in the description below. So first up was miner's lettuce, and that's actually still here. I have planted some out as well, but most of my miner's lettuce goes in the polytunnel. So that's looking pretty good, quite pleased with that. Then there was a nice big batch of lettuce, and that's just here, sown 5th of September. Just been in the greenhouse on this bench here, so it's a little bit behind because we had quite a lot of rain in September. So I'm not too worried though, because I've got loads and loads of lettuce that I've already planted out in cold frames and things on the allotment. So I'm not too worried about that progress. And then what have we got next? Oh, salad onions. So I've planted, I don't know, 300 or 400 salad onions, something like that so far. And still got just a few still to go. There's a few up here. There's a few just sort of like scattered around this greenhouse. But most of my salad onions are now in the ground. I did Guardsman and Lilia. Actually, the Lilia failed to germinate. And spinach, most of my spinach, in fact, all of my spinach is now in the ground, apart from this tray, which hasn't germinated yet because I only sowed it yesterday. And I've got two different types of spinach going. I've got a red veined variety called Rubino, and that's the one we're going to use primarily for small leaves for salads. And I've got my favourite winter spinach, which is Giant Winter, and I've got both those in the ground. I'm just going to start actually harvesting the Rubino tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that because we haven't had really good quality salad spinach for quite a while now. Wild Rocket, 9th of September, that is out now in the kitchen garden, and it's growing quite nicely. I did do a batch of brassicas for planting out in about February time, and that was red drumhead, red cabbage, graffiti cauliflower, Orkney cauliflower, and those are all down there. So they've only just been pricked out, but looking okay. There's plenty of time for them to grow on. And then there's my polytunnel lettuces, which are here, just there, and there. Yeah, so all those are sown 12th of September. So there's all of these lettuces have got about 2 weeks before they're planted out. And then the Asian greens, they're all there. So I think that is pretty much it. Oh, just a few cabbages and another batch of cauliflowers and calabrese, which are here, and I just sowed those yesterday as well. So that's everything for September. So it's all looking quite nice in here. I like it when it's all nicely planted up. But this is really the end of the seedling bench. Pretty soon this seedling bench will have plants that are overwintering on it, or plants that are being harvested on it in midwinter. And I like that more. So much as I love seedlings, I like harvesting more. And yeah, which brings me actually to the things that I'm actually going to harvest from this greenhouse. So I'll just quickly touch on these. So I've got a few experiments running down here. So I've got some experimental late carrots, which I'm hoping to harvest in midwinter. I'll probably put them outside so they get a frost by the time we get to midwinter. But right now, they're just taking advantage of the extra heat and light in the greenhouse just to give them a bit of a boost. They're looking quite nice, so I'm quite pleased with those. They need thinning out. I've got beet leaves, chard leaves, yeah, various different beetroot and chard leaves here. I've just tried these out for a kind of baby leaf harvest for the salad mixes, And I've got to say, I mean, I did them just at the beginning of September, planted them out just at the beginning of September, and they are looking really nice, and I've been eating them in the salads for a week, and yeah, I'm very pleased with them. So I'll definitely be growing on here underneath these grow lights some beet leaves for a harvest in midwinter, because they've been really lovely. And as you can see, there's loads there for harvesting this weekend. And my tomatoes, I'm very pleased with these late tomatoes. They need a bit of a water, but yeah, there's a lot of tomatoes on here. No sign of ripening right now, but they've still got a couple of weeks before I need them. So I'm hopeful that they will start ripening by the time I need them. And my strawberries are still doing nicely in here. I'm still picking a handful of strawberries every day. And I have been picking them since April. So yeah, I'm really happy with the strawberries. I've just actually potted on my strawberries for the April harvest, and they're outside at the moment enjoying a bit of cold, and I'll bring those in and start forcing them in about February time, and that gives me a nice early harvest. So let's get on to October, and the first thing we look at is more flowering brassicas. So, you know, obviously flowering brassicas don't last very long, particularly cauliflowers. So I need a lot of successions of those. So I've already got 2 successions on the go. I've got another succession which due 5th of October. And then I don't bother doing any later ones, because there's not a lot of point, I don't find. You basically just might as well start them in sort of January, February time. You're not going to get them much earlier than if you sowed them in sort of the middle of October time. So I think 5th of October is about as late as it's worth doing them to get them early in the following year. And it's pretty much the same with Calabrese, although you can push Calabrese a little bit later. So I've got 2 successions of Calabrese. So I've got 3 successions of Calabrese. I've got one here, one that I'll do 5th of October, and then one that I'll do a little bit later in October, about the middle of October, something like that. And again, that gives me a nice kind of staggered harvest of Calabrese all the way through sort of late April and early May and mid to late May sort of thing. So I get a nice harvest all the way through that period. And that's a nice complement to the purple sprouting broccoli, which I'm also getting in that period, and the cauliflowers as well. So I really have a lot of abundance in flowering brassicas in spring. Next up, I'm doing spinach Respondo and spinach Rubino, and these are my favourite spinaches for spring. So by starting them late like this, and I think the date I've got on here is 5th of October, I'm planting them out in November. I'm not going to get a harvest in midwinter, but I am going to get a harvest in early, well, maybe actually not in midwinter, but certainly by sort of late February, I'm starting to get a harvest from these plants. And then they're in full production in March. And that means as my winter spinach is kind of coming to an end, really, I'm starting with my favourite spring spinaches. So I like to do it that way. I don't like to use a compromised spinach that's good in autumn, winter and spring. I've got enough space and I enjoy planting and growing so much that I'm quite happy to have my favourite autumn spinach, my favourite winter spinach, and my favourite spring spinaches as separate plantings. And because I use grow lights and because I overwinter in the greenhouse and things like that, I've always got follow-on crops ready to plant as I clear a bed in, say, January or something like that. It's not a problem for me. So next up is my first sowing of broad beans. I just always do aquadults, and they'll go in the polytunnel in a container. You get them 2 or 3 weeks earlier. It doesn't seem like it's worth the effort, really, unless you've not eaten beans, you know, since October, like me. So it's just really nice to have that early crop just a few weeks earlier. And it does give some height in the polytunnel, because they do grow pretty big, broad beans, in a polytunnel over winter. And so it looks a bit like this tomato plant here. You can get a lot of height and it's just nice to have something growing tall in the polytunnel at that time of year. So that's one of the reasons I do it. As I say, it's just a bit of fun, really. Green garlic. I do my green garlic in my tomato tubs. So my summer tomatoes, main crop tomatoes, have finished now outside. So I take those out, recondition the pots, and plant green garlic in all of those. And green garlic is exactly the same as ordinary garlic. I just use a soft neck garlic. What makes it green is that you just harvest it immature, and that's really nice, because I tend to run out of garlic about mid to the end of April. That's exactly when the green garlic comes ready. So as the stored garlic is kind of coming to the end, drying out a little bit, losing its quality, I'm eating beautiful green garlic, which is just the best. And I eat that all the way through until early June, really, when only a few weeks later we've got mature garlic again. So I really like that. And middle of October is when I start planting out my actual garlic for storage, and I've got probably about 150 of those, something like that, to plant. And I'm generally interplanting them into beds. So I might, for example, interplant them in between my lamb's lettuce. I've got an example outside there of lamb's lettuce interplanted with salad onions. You could do exactly the same with garlic, for example. So, or I put it around the edges of beds. Sometimes I dedicate a whole bed to it, not often, because it just takes up so much prime spring and summer growing space where I could bring in such a big harvest during that period. I don't really just want to waste it for garlic, because, as I say, I can kind of pop the garlic in around the edges of beds or interplant it or whatever and still get just as good a harvest. And then, as I say, middle of October, put my last succession of calabrese in for this year. Obviously, as I say, early next year I'll have more calabrese in. And then, I'm always doing lettuce. Lettuce is really important to us. We've got a big family. We all eat salads pretty much every day. I eat a salad every day. So we're always doing successions of lettuce. This batch of lettuce that I'll do middle of October gets planted out about a month later, so middle of November. It's not going to grow very much middle of November, of course, because by within a month it's basically stopped growing. But that time between the middle of November and the middle of December, it allows it to get really well established, put some roots down. It's then happy basically to sit there until about early February, when it starts growing again. You will notice a little bit of growth even in midwinter, but not very much. And it'll be under cover in a cold frame or a low tunnel, and then it just springs to life. It's so well established. It's got some good leaf growth on it. It's got good root system. It really springs to life towards the middle of February, and it's growing really strongly in March, and you're sort of harvesting it end of March, early April, something like that. So it's really nice as a way to get your favourite spring varieties of lettuce really, really early and not be stuck just eating your winter varieties of lettuce, which don't always overwinter very well. It depends on the year, really. Sometimes we can have quite a lot of lettuce stem rot, and if that happens, it's really nice to have all those late lettuces in reserve. So that's those lettuce. And my favourite varieties for spring are Canasta, Riccia, Navara, Flashy Lightning Butter Oak, Grenoble Red, and Lola Rossa. So that's a nice selection. But you could do loads of others as well. Towards the end of October, about 18th to 20th, something like that, is a good time to do carrots for an early harvest again next year. Start harvesting them mid to late April sort of time, and then you're harvesting in May and early June from the same batch, from the same sowing. The real benefit of doing them at that time is there's just enough time, it's a bit like the lettuce story, it's just enough time for them to grow enough leaf to kind of hold their own over winter and survive well over winter. They need to be under cover. I just generally do mine in big containers in the polytunnel, but they don't grow very much. So by the time you get to February, they're probably only about that big. That's about 2 inches, you know, a long way away from me. But that's enough leaf growth for them to really, you know, again, burst into life in March. And then again, they'll just grow really strongly through March. I generally put mine outside in April and put them high, because by April you've got a bit of carrot fly around. So I put mine high up on top of my IBC tanks. And as I say, then they're ready about the end of April. End of April is about when my winter carrots, which are ready now, but we're not eating them yet, are finishing. They're not so much finishing in terms of quality, they're just finishing in terms of they will start to go to seed in, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later. So in May, probably they'll start to go to seed. But also I just need the bed. I need the bed to put, you know, in about sort of 10th, 15th of April, something like that, onions in, for example. So, and there's just no comparison between a carrot that's been in the ground, well, actually since, you know, late May, growing all the way through, nice and slow, because your winter carrots are nice, slow growing ones, really dense, but super sweet in winter. Between those and carrots that have done most of their growing in spring. Nice and quick, beautiful, sweet, tender carrots. So, yeah, and then I'll be replacing, sort of towards the end of October, I'll be replacing these beet leaves and beetroot leaves. I'm not actually trying to grow beetroot at this time. What I'm trying to do is get a really nice harvest of tender beet and chard leaves for the salad mixes, just so that in midwinter we have really nice salads, because there's nothing like a sort of limp, boring salad in winter. And I will actually have all this bench down here, under these grow lights down here, it'll be full of lettuces, spinaches, beet leaves, radish, things like that, salad ingredients basically, which will complement the salads that I'll be taking off the allotment. The challenge with the salads off the allotment is they're not very crispy and crunchy. You know, the leaf quality is starting to decline in midwinter. So it's nice to have a mix. You know, I don't mind winter salads coming off the allotment, but I don't love them. And when you add leaves with really high quality from the greenhouse that have got a lot of crunch to the ribs, for example, and just a really lovely leaf quality and a lot of beautiful colour in and all that sort of thing, it just makes the salad so much livelier, really, and feels like summer. So yeah, so I'm going to just be doing a standard sort of selection: rhubarb chard, boulder or golden beetroot, and bull's blood beet leaves. And I did try actually doing just the beet leaves in one of my cold frames last year. There just wasn't enough light energy to get good quality leaf. So you got to really get, you know, I think you probably just got to do them in a polytunnel with some grow lights. And I just anticipate, I always get this question, where did I get these grow lights from? Well, I just bought them as a job lot off eBay. You can often find these old industrial lights, as soon as they start to have a problem, like a few of the LEDs starting to fail or something like that, or one of the adjusters, light intensity adjusters failing, or, you know, any problems basically, they get rid of them. But they're perfectly good and serviceable in here. So, you know, I think they're about, well, probably certainly half the price of new ones. And I've easily paid for them just on harvest from last year. So yeah, highly recommend it. And they heat the plants a little bit as well. So you get that dual benefit of a bit of heat and loads of light. Makes the greenhouse look absolutely stunning in winter. And I don't have them on all the time. I just have them on first thing in the morning, last thing at night, to add a sort of 3 or 4 hours at the top and tail of the day, and use natural light during the day. So that's the way I do it. And then my next batch of broad beans to go outside. I always start my broad beans now in module trays. It's a lot more hassle, but it stops the mice eating them. I just found that all of them just get eaten by mice last year. And I do the same with my field beans. So I grow broad beans and field beans. Field beans are just a smaller bean, very similar to a broad bean actually, but still really nice. We primarily grow the field beans though for the leaves in sort of February, March, early April sort of time. They're just a really nice complement to spinach, and lower in oxalic acid than spinach. So people really love them in smoothies. People have them in salads. I don't particularly like them in salads myself, but you can cook them, steam them, whatever, just like you would a spinach. And if you let a few of them grow on, you get a nice bean as well as a bonus. And of course, like all beans, especially if you don't let them flower, i.e. harvest them before they flower, then they leave quite a lot of nitrogen in the ground for you. And then I will be experimenting with some super early peas, so some meteor or similar sort of first early peas, which will go down there probably, or in one of these corners where these tomatoes are at the moment, in November. Well, obviously I'm sowing them in October, planting them out in November, and yeah, they'll grow really high because when light levels are low, they're drawn up, so you get a really big plant. And again, it's nice to have some height in the greenhouse over winter. So yeah, and again, we don't freeze peas, we only eat them fresh. So it's just nice to really have a really nice early start to peas. And looking forward to that. So that is it for October. Not a huge amount, but enough. I've got a lot, as I say, a lot in the ground. I think about 2/3 of my ground is currently planted with crops for winter and spring now. And the rest of it's just what's left over of the summer crops, and all that's going to be replanted with all this stuff that's ready to go in here. So, as I say, look in the description if you're interested. There's loads more information down there. My name's Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.